When I first read Harry Potter, unlike the normal kids who found Diagon Alley a place of wonder and excitement, I saw an inefficiency nightmare. The scene where Harry finds out that he's mega loaded, we learn about how wizards do cash. Their money was made up of 3 different types of currency: golden galleons, silver sickles, and bronze nuts. If Hagrid can be trusted, there are 17 sickles in a galleon, 29 nuts in a sickle, or 493 nuts in a galleon. Wait, what? I later found out that this confusing system of currency was inspired by J.K. Rowling's childhood. It turns out that British money used to be extremely confusing. In fact, it was even more convoluted than the money of the wizards. Allow me to explain. Much like in Harry's story, British currency before 1971 was made up of 3 different monetary units. They may sound familiar to you. You have your pound, not unlike today. Good so far. You have the shilling, and of course you have the penny. A pound was worth 20 shillings, and a shilling was worth 12 pennies, so 240 pennies were in a pound. Okay, not so complicated. So, if you lived in the UK in, say, the 1940s, you had 3 monetary units to remember instead of the 2 that they have today. Or did you? It turns out we're actually missing a few things. Because even though the UK did have the pound, shilling, and penny, they also had the farthing, the halfpenny, the threepenny bit, the sixpence, the 2 bob bit, the half crown, the 10 bob note, the pound note, and the 5 pound note. If you just recoiled in your computer chair at inefficiency terror, I don't blame you, because we not only had these 3 units to worry about, each with its own nickname of course, but pennies were also subdivided into small and seemingly pointless denominations. A penny could be split into quarters, which would be called a farthing, or a quarter penny. In Britain, the plural of penny is not pennies, but pence. So 3 pennies, or pence, would be called an endearing threepence. The threepence was also called a joey. 2 threepence, or joeys, were a sixpence, also called a tanner. 4 pence was known as a groat, or 2 half-groats. Of course, if the precedent has not been set yet, the penny wouldn't go by the name penny, as that would be far too easy. Pennies were called coppers, because everything had to have a nickname. The shilling was also called a bob. 2 bobs made a florin, or a 2 bob bit. 2 shillings and a sixpence was a half crown, and 5 shillings was a crown. The pound also had a few nicknames to remember. The pound coin was called a sovereign, and the bill was called a quid. In fact, you often still hear it called that today. Now, if you add 1 shilling to a pound, then you get a guinea. While a guinea was simply worth a pound and a shilling, it was considered more gentlemanly to pay them. You used pounds to pay a carpenter or a blacksmith, but artists or gentlemen would be paid only in guineas. So who devised this insane system? You can trace its origins all the way back to the year 1066, when Normans conquered England. You know the Normans, right? The invaders from France that were Vikings, but were Christian? Those guys. The British coins were devised a little later. They were introduced by King Henry II, and the confusing denominations were not based on making things easy to convert, but instead, each coin type was based on the weight of a precious metal. A penny was a literal pennyweight of silver, and a pound, weighing 240 pennyweights, was a pound of silver. The crown began as a gold coin issued during the reign of King Henry VIII. I guess monetary policy was part of the agenda between wives and founding new religions. The crown was made from gold for about 7 years, when his son, Edward VI, turned it into a silver coin. The symbols for these 3 main units were this, or L, for the pound, S for the shilling, and D for the penny. These all come from Latin. The L used in pound, even today in certain countries that somehow still use pounds as a measurement system for weight, are from the term libra, meaning scales, like the zodiac. The S in shilling stood for the word solidas, and the D in penny stood for denarius. Both were units of Roman money. So the UK finally did away with all of this in 1971, when J.K. Rowling was 6. Now, the UK simply uses pounds worth 100 pence, and it seems to work for them. When it comes to the wizarding world, their system of organizing money seems simple by comparison to how the UK did it for centuries. Their dedication to making things complicated for everyone is now simply limited to trolling international agreements.
What a weird dream. I thought I was Canadian for a minute there. Canadian, can you imagine?